If you're an NBA fan, you most likely have heard about the league's crazy records. 73 wins for a team, 100 points in a game, 1,192 consecutive games by a player. Records like these are nothing short of spectacular. The NBA has had many famous records, but it's also had more obscure ones. I dug deep enough into the obscurity hole, and today, I found what might be the most interesting out of all in that hole. The record for the longest time an NBA team had draft rights to a player. Draft rights are an exclusive legal claim a team has to sign a given player to a contract. When that player gets selected, they lose the right to talk to the other 29 teams, so they can't say they don't want to sign with Team A and instead Team B. They have two choices: sign with the team that drafted them or not play in the NBA at all. These rights have many common uses, but there's also one that we'll talk about and why that use correlates to this very record. So stick around and enjoy the lore. Alright, let's now take a look into that use, one that is arguably the most common of these rights today. In many cases, teams do a draft and stash, especially in the second round. It's a strategy where teams draft a player but choose not to sign them to an NBA contract immediately. The player would be allowed to continue playing for a pro team outside of the NBA, usually an overseas league, while the team retains their draft rights. When a team stashes a player, they have these advantages. The stash doesn't take up a roster spot, their salary isn't counted against the team's salary cap, and the stash can get more experience, coaching, and playing time overseas, which helps them significantly with their development and for them to get ready for the NBA, avoiding a disastrous rookie season. One great draft and stash was Nikola Jokic. He spent a year in Serbia's Adriatic League before arriving to the NBA, and during the stash, he had a breakthrough, winning the league's MVP, averaging 15 points and 9 rebounds per game. Jokic was able to cut off his notorious bad habits that got him out of shape. These bad habits had gotten so bad, he was drinking 3 liters of Coca-Cola a day, unable to do a single push-up. He went from a raw talent that was a liability in many areas to one that was ready for prime time. After he spent that year, the obligation he had to stay in the Adriatic League was cut, and he signed with the Nuggets in the summer of 2015. Usually, stashes spend at least a single year, going by the rules, then go to the NBA. But this isn't always the case. Sometimes, stashes remain overseas longer than you might expect, and might even end up having their entire career without ever playing a single NBA game, without notifying their draft team that they were able to go to the NBA and continuing to have their draft rights. And if that becomes the case, these players are usually mostly forgotten by American fans sometime later after they were drafted. And among the players that spend their entire career overseas, an Italian 7-footer has that draft rights longevity record. That 7-footer's name is Augusto Binelli. Now, there's an extremely high chance you've never heard of this guy before. His Wikipedia page doesn't have much info about him, not much footage exists of his playing days, and basically, Binelli was a star in the wrong place. Binelli was born on September 23, 1964. He was one of the most notable Italian stars from the 1980s to late 1990s, helping his team, the Virtus Bologna, win 5 Italian League championships, Italian Cups, a ring in the EuroLeague in 1998, and led the Italian national team to bronze in the 1985 FIBA World Championship. What made him stand out from other European 7-footers at the time was that he actually had American high school experience. Playing for Long Island Lutheran in New York, he attended the same school as players like Bill Wennington. He had surprisingly quick feet for one weighing 260 pounds, incredible length and timing, and anchored the Virtus defense. Binelli was a prodigy. When he played for Long Island Lutheran, he led them to the state championship, being named an All-American. He was given the nickname Gus around this time because his teammates and coaches struggled to pronounce his last name, so instead of saying Augusto, they simply went for Gus. He was selected 40th overall by the Atlanta Hawks in the 1986 draft, and to many, it seemed like just another average pick. Little did we know that he would plant the seeds for one of the most fascinating NBA records of all time. After being drafted to the Hawks, there were some problems though. It wasn't just scouting that was vastly different in 1986. Overseas contract rules were too. If an international player signed an NBA contract, they were considered a professional. However, professionals would be banned from representing their national team and for playing in many European competitions. Binelli wanted to be a national identity, one that would be the flag of a single city, over being a journeyman in America. The Hawks attempted to get him to the NBA in 1988 with a tryout, giving a final push to sign him. Binelli thought the contract from the Hawks wasn't convincing enough, so he stayed in Italy. Had he gone to the NBA, his legacy in Bologna would have been diminished. Binelli's career was very, very long. After 18 seasons with Virtus, Binelli didn't retire. He spent his late 30s, early 40s, and even his mid-40s playing in the lower divisions of Italian basketball, playing for many more different teams. He didn't retire until he was 46 in 2010, a feat that has only been achieved once in the NBA by Vince Carter. Let's go back to talking about draft rights for a second. Remember when I said that teams retain their draft rights to a stash when that stash is overseas? Well, When a stash has their entire career outside the NBA and their draft team doesn't intervene with the rights, the duration of the rights eventually can grow so long that at some point, the rights will then become useful in future trades as filler that could potentially make a trade valid. Even after they retire, in many cases, the rights don't. That makes an already significant duration become super significant. Over Binelli's playing days, he was in Italy long enough. Meanwhile, in the NBA, what happened was a remainder of the Lakers-Celtics rivalry, the Bulls' 2 three-peats, the emergence of the Spurs, the drafting of LeBron James, the addition of the one-and-done rule to NBA drafts, and finally, the Lakers' 2010 championship. The NBA changed so much from 1985 to 2010. Playing styles transitioned, especially with the dip ball era. If you subtract 2010 from 1986, that's 24 years the rights survived. But things get even crazier from here. Since I also said earlier that rights don't always immediately expire when a player declares retirement, Binelli's rights continued and continued and continued without a hitch. The rights reached 30 years and then 35. And as we travel to today, those rights have remained for a whopping 39 years and 9 months, with the 40th anniversary coming on June 17th, the day Binelli was drafted. He is now 61 years old, and his legacy has been more than solidified at this point. To put 39 years into perspective, the average length of an NBA career is 4.8 years. NBA television rights deals, 8 to 11 years. Adam Silver, the current commissioner, has spent 12 years. The average length of an NBA owner, 15 to 20 years. Hell, even the average length of an NBA arena, 30 years. Binelli has beat all these other lengths and then some. And the shocking thing out of all of this, those rights have never been used in a trade. The Hawks made hundreds of trades in those 39 years without Binelli being listed as a name. Binelli has come up on Reddit numerous times this decade. There's a post from 2020, one from 2023, and yet another in a comment in 2021. The longer this record survives, the more impactful it gets, and naturally, more and more people will know about it and make a mention. For a list of the top 5 longest kept draft rights, Binelli leads, and it's not even close. Number 2 is Sergei Krylov at 21 years and 9 months, who was drafted by the Spurs. Tied with Krylov is Albert Mireles, drafted by the Raptors. And number 4 is Fran Vasquez, who had his rights renounced after 19 years. Compared to Krylov, Binelli's rights have lasted 18 more years, with 18 being the length of the careers of Hakeem Olajuwon, Ray Allen, and Tony Parker. In the many crazy but obscure NBA records, this 39-year-old draft right, in my opinion, is a tier above the rest. While it's likely it will not happen right now, you never know that just before the 40-year mark, there is still potential that those rights will be renounced. And if that right doesn't, how longer can it go? Will it reach 50 years? 75? 100? We'll see what time does. Anyways, I'm some random Xander. This is it for the video, and remember guys, stay random. Goodbye.